So welcome to the panel. First panel, we have two panels. We split up. So we have really a very highly acclaimed researchers here in blockchain technology, and actually what's combining both of the panels and the speakers in the afternoon is that they're all people with highly acclaimed records in science, and actually actively developing current technology to bring into the real world blockchain distributed ledger technology. So maybe that's also the setting for this room here. To explain that one a little bit is like, in Danish you would say it's like gamle dyder I nye tider. So it's actually a motto stolen from a company here. But the key thing is that I think about it this way: this is one of the 66 institutions that's still in existence that's more than 500 years old. 62 of those are universities. And you might say universities have an obligation and maybe also a track record of being a little bit more far-sighted and having a knack of existing for a long time by bringing solid, long-range knowledge, building it up and bringing it to use. And at the same time, fintech, very modern. So how can we bridge this is making sure that we have science-based, solid-based, you might say, impact on the world to democratize actually maybe certain aspects of society. So that's the little background for this one. But I'd like to start. We've already heard a little bit about, no, I don't know if you want to sit or stand. It's maybe easier to okay, we stand. I don't know. I mean, maybe you want to say something about yourselves very briefly, Manuel, why don't you start?
Hello, my name is Manuel Chakravarty. My background is research in programming languages and compilers, specializing on functional programming, type systems, and high-performance computing. And I'm now leading together with Phil Wadler from the University of Edinburgh, the Bluetooth smart contract team at IOHK.
Thanks.
My name is Bas Pires. I'm associate professor at Aarhus University. There we recently started a blockchain research center. It's about 8 million euros for 8 years. And I'm leading the part there on formal verification and programming languages. We have two other people there, Jesper Buus Nielsen and Claudio Orlandi, who are doing the cryptographic parts. And there's a team, close to 20 people there now. We have both research center at the university, and there's a company of about between 50 and 100 people at various places.
Good morning. My name is Michel Mauny. I'm coming from France. I've been working several decades for INRIA, which is a research center in France on programming languages as well. I've also been a professor in university during another decade. I'm currently a member of the board of the Tezos Foundation, and I'm working for a company named Nomadic Labs that is based in Paris that does research and development on Tezos.
Well, thank you very much. So just some kind of fresh words about myself. What you should notice from this slide is that I also have a double role here. So I'm presently actually on leave from the University of Copenhagen and working for DEON Digital, which is based on technology developed actually at the University of Copenhagen 10 years ago. Don't mention that. But it's very, very actually actively developed right now. But the thing I wanted to, and in the connection of blockchain, so usually actually I would like to start with this, okay? So this is, the fundamental question actually many people here and hopefully here are asking yourselves. And actually, if you look at actually who wrote this one, why blockchain? It's Wind and Surf. Now everybody here knows Wind and Surf, but who knows Wind and Surf here? So who's Wind and Surf? Yeah, there's a couple of people, so they're all computer scientists and I know them. So the key thing is that he's one of the chief designers of two protocols that are known TCP and IP, which are the internet, okay? So he's basically given a presentation at some point where this question was asked, which was that, why blockchain? And he basically said, yeah, you don't need it. Now, the interesting thing is now, is that it's important to know, he used to be at the University of Purdue, now he is at Google. So if you look at the next slide, you might say that, well, for him, maybe it's, if I'm going over here, it's quite clear, why do you need to decentralize anything at all? Just give you data and whatever to company X, in this case, he's working for Google, might be another company you have in mind. So why decentralize? So, and then the arrow leads to the right, and then we're done. We can go home, right? So the decentralization, as we've already seen, is a major part. Then tamper-proof logging pops up, and storing and transferring resources is actually the main challenge, you might say, is decentralized way of challenging resources like money. I mean, trillions, as Silvio mentioned, or house properties, or representations of real things in the real world. So the first question I'd like to ask here is then, assuming there is actually a reason to go to the left here, how do we get this out into the real world? And the challenge, I think, is the following. It's like blockchain is by definition an infrastructure. It is most valuable for not 10 people, or not even for the room here of 300 people. It's for millions of people. So how do we get from one who's got a brilliant idea, or maybe anyone here actually has got a brilliant idea, to 10? And the main challenge is from 10 who all know each other and are perceived to know each other, how do we go to 1,000, and from 1,000 to 1 million? And the challenge really is, well, if you're running the show now, or any one of you, I mean, why should other people then trust that this will scale out into a fair, democratic, efficient economic system?
I don't need
Manuel.
the microphone.
Yes.
Well, I think actually there's been quite a bit of research, not by computer scientists, into how technology disseminates through a society. And interestingly, it always works in the same way, whether you have a washing machine, you have your mobile phone, or blockchains. There's always a distribution curve, which looks like this. And it's traditionally segmented into early adopters and so on until late adopters phases. And we don't have a choice here. All technology disseminates like this, and blockchains won't be different. What's interesting, well, it's like gravity. We don't have to discuss it. It's just like it is. And the interesting thing here is to understand where are you in this curve, because the desires and the incentives for people in these different segments in the dissemination curve are different. And you have to speak to them in different ways. So I think it's good to look at this and look at the different incentives.
Thank you. And before Silvio asks, let me raise the ante. I mean, this actually happens for successful technologies. They follow this curve. There are a lot of attempts at technology that do not rise at all. So how do we get them into the diffusion stage?
So, first of all, I believe that there is a genuine appetite for decentralization in the world. And in particular, if you look at the young among us, 92% of the millennials don't trust centralized institutions. That's a fact. That is also a fact that centralized institutions are very inefficient, except for them perhaps, because 6% of the global GDP is lost in financial friction. So do we have psychological, societal, and economic incentive? Yes, okay. The question is really about technology, and I believe that all the people here represent somehow very technology advanced, blockchain, and it's very good, by the way, that there is a multiplicity. I'm sure that Google likes one Google and some other popular, but I think actually competition is good, and each one of us can actually perfect one particular angle, and I really believe that cooperation is better than competition, so we are ready to exchange knowledge and perfect the way we can actually serve the public. You are right that initially there is a path to decentralization. You cannot decentralize right away, but I believe that the appetite is there, the technology, when it's there, is there, and we will see that happen.
Thank you. So I think I agree with a lot of things that have been said. So one thing where Concordium may be a bit different from some of the other projects is that it comes from a need from professional investors to have a blockchain but they cannot use it at the moment because what's missing is, and this was one of the questions that was raised before, KYC, know your customer, and anti-money laundering. And we know that in Denmark, the banks are actually not very good at this. This is something where we can improve. Also, the privacy that we have on both on the blockchain. So Bitcoin has been compared to Twitter for your bank account. You can actually see all the transactions. So this is something that we want to improve, and in fact, in the Concordium blockchain, we have improved. So we have private transactions, we have private proof of stake. So this is something that, so the Concordium blockchain is something that tries to improve the banking system, and it's really, it's a professional blockchain, but with many of the same features as the other high quality projects that we have here.
Michel, may I just raise the ante to you also in the sense that blockchain, we've seen this mentioned actually, I mean, Silvio, you gave all the points away, is that, it's meant to be decentralized, but in the end it very quickly emerges sometimes that not intended, there's a certain club of influencers actually that decide things, just like you might have on paper a democracy like the Weimar Republic, and it might just not work in the end, okay? So, how do we scale it and have a governance model that has a viable chance of actually working?
Yes, so in fact, it appears that sorry, Tezos has on-chain governance, which enables the protocol to evolve during the life of the chain. So the goal of this is to avoid forking when people disagree on what the blockchain should do. So this is a very interesting model, and it's a kind of democratic built-in system on the blockchain, where amendments to the protocol are first proposed, and then they get voted and finally adopted, and they are integrated to the chain. And this presents several advantages. First of all, it allows we call it the bakers, the miners, the nodes contributed to the chain to manage and to govern the chain themselves. That's for one thing. And the other thing is that it enables to adopt, integrate newer technologies for the chain to be kept up to date. To come back to the original question, for the blockchain to get adopted, there are many things to be present. I guess having an open source project, the code must be visible to anyone in order to check that there is no hidden things in the code, and this should strengthen the trust that people would put on the blockchain. Of course, there are economic economic incentives on using the blockchain, and of course that this is very important. And also the technology has to be ready. At some point, the market, so to speak, and the technology must be ready at the same time, and then things can move on. So maybe we are precisely at that time today. I hope so.
Well, let me challenge all of you then, actually, and all of us here on that. Okay, so it seems, you could facetiously say, and maybe even realistically, that, the blockchain initiatives now, they're just like the European Union. It's like, it looks like, blockchain, that's the union, but then when you're closer at it, it's like, oh, Algorand, or Cardano, or Concordium, or Tezos. And the argument then being easy, of course, it's like, oh, it'll work if all of you just join blockchain X, put all your resources, all your, managers, all your existing tokens, money into my blockchain, then I'll solve the world for you. I mean, the problem of the world for you. And if everybody says that, we have basically the same problem again as before, only at the blockchain level. How do we achieve a democratic interchange, really, of multiple resource managers, you could say, of blockchains, and how can they interact, which we'll see later on. And Michel Hood is working on the real world integration of real world assets with things. How do we make this a smooth and friction-free, open market, you could say, where we can have multiple, in this case, multiple blockchain systems interact. That's the problem that I always think is very important. So, Any thoughts?
Well, first of all, we are competitors, but also we have a common interest. Okay, the blockchain technology should get adopted, and the goal is not that one blockchain must succeed and kill all others. The goal is to develop the market, the technologies, and so we have common interest. It is that should be said. Afterwards, I guess there will be several successful, I hope, there will be several successful blockchains, and it's a matter of interoperability. It has technical aspects, also economic aspects, which I'm not a specialist of, but I guess.
I would say, as Silvio said, it's a technological problem, and we are here at a university because I think we all realize that we are missing a lot of the scientific foundation which we need for this technology, and this is how science has always worked, as a mix of collaboration with friendly competition and exchange of ideas. And I think this is really the only way forward, a science-based approach on these grounds to develop the technology which we need to make this happen.
Great. So maybe there's questions from the audience. Oh, sorry. Did I cut anybody off?
No, I mean,
so maybe there's questions from the audience. Omri is going to have his own platform in a second. So if you have questions, so maybe, provocatively, we up here could ask and say, why is development not much more driven in practice by, solid science? But you could also ask, how can we get these things to be in practice realized for our purposes? That just two kinds of questions could be asked. Anybody have a question? And Omri is out-competing everybody? Okay.
Thank you very much. I think it's really interesting, and I really like, Silvio, in your talk that you mentioned the economic fairness, and you mentioned the Dutch auction or the inverse, one of them. And I think in most blockchain projects, I mean, all the way from Bitcoin, there's been a lot of concentration of power in the sense of voting power and in the sense of assets. And one of the ideas behind it, and I think you all, I hope, believe in it, like me and many others, is to actually somehow distribute it, not to be more of the same. And how do you ensure that we don't end up with a small minority owning 90% of the voting powers and later on the economic power in your blockchains?
So, well, first of all, again, we should accept that there is a path to decentralization, but as long as there is a path, things are going to be decentralized, particularly when you are going to see that you are going to start posting assets, real-world assets on the blockchain. And so when the money goes towards the assets, and so things we are going to be great catalyst for distributing and accelerating the distribution of the tokens. The notion also of having, in our case, we all mean well, but we just have different paths to the goal. So we feel that having, somehow auctions which are not a single auction, but over a period of 5 years, allows people to get to know a bit more and perhaps participate to a later stage. So rather than say, I was not technology savvy, now it's too late, all the money is gone. So you have multiple chances, right? So I believe that ultimately the value of this business is really in democratizing, the way we interact with each other and disintermediate things. I believe that having multiple solutions to common problem is actually good. I don't think that having, one choice is very democratic at all. So I think that, necessarily so, if you have a different blockchain, you must be solving better some problem in a particular, of a particular type. And therefore, I believe that people will use multiple blockchains, frankly. And the same way that, to come over here, I took the plane, but later on I'm going to go from Milan to Rome. I will take the train instead. And moving around, I'll take a car, right? And hopefully I will walk too. So I think we are always multiple customers of different type of approaches, right? But to have an infrastructure, to have an aviation system, airport and routes and common interest, not to have accidents and so forth. The other one, you have to lay down asphalts. The other one, to lay down tracks. So I think it's. But these things will actually work very well. And the point is that we have to be a little bit, cognizant of the fact that we must make it easy. If we accept the fact that we want to serve together the same people, to make it easy to go from a given blockchain to another, and so that we can migrate where it is easier for us at that point in time. And I think that is a common challenge, but I think that we are here to solve it, so we are committed to solve it. But I'm saying, first of all, we should recognize that choice is not a problem. We value diversity. And so that to have a diverse offering is a fundamental right.
So as a concrete question here is like, what if you mentioned actually the hardness and fairness of atomic swaps, I mean, which is the foundation of any kind of economic, and by the way, money theory, namely economic exchanges. Yes. What if some of the resources are managed on Cardano and some of them on Tezos? And do you have any thoughts right now on how to achieve that without a master blockchain to be the one you had at the end, the one that indicated this is the current state of the world? I mean, that's all for all of you. Sorry.
So that there's a body of cryptographic work that allows you to do this. I'm not a cryptographer myself, so I'm very hesitant to say something in the presence of Silvio. I just want to say that there's a body of cryptographic work, and we have a team of high-quality cryptographers that are working on this. Maybe you want to add on that. I don't want to go into the details, but I don't think this is the hard problem.
So certainly atomic swap live on the Algorand chain. So if you have a different setting of the Algorand chain, we have this at a layer 1. Between different chains, we must have it necessarily a layer 2, but if there is a will, there is a way, and if we like each other, as I hope we do, we can actually sit down and say, how can we do as atomic swaps as possible across different chains, and we have a common interest in doing so, and I think these are problems that actually are going to be solved. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.